Welcome to the Smithville Community Gardens. Today we're hosting a tool time and a plant swap. This has been funded by the St. David's Foundation to help folks who are gardening at home so that they know they can check out tools from the community gardens. They can take them home, they can use them at home, and then bring them back for somebody else to use. And I have Jim Horton here to introduce the use of a lot of these tools, and hopefully we'll get a chance to demonstrate some of them in use here at the community gardens. Jim?
I'm Jim Horton, and I welcome you to the Smithville Community Gardens. Well, I've got quite an array of tools here, but there really are only about 3 I use. And but I want you to know what is available, because there are some usages that you may have around your home that you would need this for. Pine straw and very light leaves. That's about it. And then this goes right back in the garage, and it never comes out until next fall, or until the pine straw falls again in the driveway. And then you rake that up and put it in your beds, so as a mulch. So that, rarely used. I'm not sure how this got brought about into the garden, except for rocks and heavy metals and things that are bigger than you. This seems to work pretty good as a rake. Otherwise, it picks up too much as far as leaves, and it doesn't do a damn thing for the walkway except stripe it. So if your sand needs striping, this is the perfect tool.
If you have an area at home with a lot of rocks that you want to clear to make a garden,
That's the rake.
Would be a good one.
You could rake them up nicely out of the grass, get them out of the way of the mower, and put them into another of the very least used tools, the square point shovel. It's good for picking things up. It's a long-handled dustpan. It digs in under the last section of rock and takes it up. Other than that, I'm not real sure what it does. Help me with that one if you can figure out one. Mixing concrete, that's another good one. It's got a flat bottom, so it gets everything off the bottom. It's the round point shovel. The round point shovel is probably the most used tool in the garden. I prefer square-handled or a square point, just because it slices as well as chops through. But if I'm digging
I never saw that. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
The square things on the ends of each one of them on the.
For stepping on.
To put your
I've
foot
never
on.
seen one like
Right,
that.
Yeah.
to put your foot on,
How
and so
old-fashioned.
they made it so
That's cool.
it's louvered, and
Oh my God.
so you can't slip very much.
Very good.
I'm not a big fan of the fiberglass handle. If you tend to leave them in the sun or out of doors for any length of time, they degrade, and they're really easy to snap and break.
Are they
wooden-
lighter than the wooden ones?
Sometimes, depends on the foot. There's one that my friend Richard Boys laughed at and then bought for like $90 20 years ago, that weighs about 45 pounds. And we laughed at it. We said, well, let's just see what it does. And it would cut a 3-foot hole right now. Just drop it, and it sliced into the ground. So you were making less
muscle work.
than you would if you had to knock this into the dirt.
I just switching mine to a fiberglass.
But
I thought
You
they
wouldn't
would
use
last.
that shovel for very long. You would,
No?
yeah, it'd be something that
Oh,
would.
I thought they would last, so I switched them
Yeah.
over.
If you'll do linseed oil on your boiled linseed oil, if you'll do your handles every 8 weeks, maybe, 3-4 times a year, just give them a good clean and another layer of that oil, and that keeps them. Of course, keeping them in the shed really works, but yeah, in the shade or the shed, either one. But this one does a slicing motion where this one tends to make a rounded scheme
For digging.
going on when you're digging out. This square point shovel is my favorite tool. Well, outside of handleless fork. But this, I've even broken the handle on one and had this for a while. That was a nice tool. But can I show you something with this? Let's go over this way. Bermuda is hard.
Oh, I hate it. I hate the word.
I brought 2 other tools that help in the job you're doing.
With this old broken thing, I can continue up once I get a nice clean spot and almost take it out a handful at a time.
And that favorite fork of Jim's is very heavy. This works as well too. So
It's sort of like
that
that
the Judy
45,
yes, this is the
40
Judy one.
45-pound shovel. You don't need to push hard. It's going in.
And we're trying to loosen the roots so that we can pull them up and clear this area so that it can be planted or mulched if we want to put down some mulch to fight the weeds. But it also makes it easier for a mower to get around this bed without having to get in all the corners.
Yeah.
The next tool, some
Some-
people are more familiar with this hoe, and you can cut edges in your rows for planting. There's a lot of things that you can do with this hoe that you can't do with this one. But when it comes to removing weeds, the wiggle hoe is your best friend.
I do every single thing that you guys have done right there with a regular hand shovel. And trust me, it's a lot of work.
Yes, yeah, this wiggle hoe.
This is definitely less work.
Absolutely. And we have several of them if people want to check them out and use them.
Well, I'm a glutton for punishment.
Jim, I brought a couple trowels if you want to
Well,
use those for
let's-
planting.
That's what.
Or
those
Donna, if you want to demonstrate the trowels, we're going to plant.
She got
few
the
plants
Golden
here.
Trowel Award.
That's right. Donna was the recipient of the Golden Trowel Award for the Smithfield Community Gardens.
Hey, Donna.
And I typically like to water them before I put them in. And one of the key things is don't bury them deeper than the plant itself, or you'll smother it.
Keep the soil level the same.
Yeah, keep the soil level the same.
And even if you water them before you put them in, I think it's very important to water them after they go in to remove any air bubbles from around the plant.
Get them nice and snuggly and settled in.
That's right. And a little bit about the soil. Plants need nutrients just like human beings, and the nutrients for the plants are organic matters. Jim's got potting soil, which is consists of peat moss. There's a little white styrofoam looking thing that's perlite, and it also has something called vermiculite. And Jim uses this organic fertilizer that's already been mixed in here a few weeks ago when we prepared the soil. If your plants aren't looking good, the key things you're going to ask yourself is what's going on with the soil, because that's what the plants are living off of. So if your plants are doing really, really well, it's because of your soil that has a lot of organic matters. There's also a lot of mulch that we put on top. The mulch not only breaks down and turn into nutrients for the plants, but it also helps retain water when you put it as top coating, so you don't have to water as much. In the summer, that's especially helpful. Now, people forget about in the winter, the mulch is also very helpful. I guess I could take my mask off so you can see. The mulch will help protect the plants in the winter. It's like having a coat to keep them warm. And nature are very interesting. You see all the leaves that sheds, that drops in the winter. Not only it's a time for renew, but what it does is all the leaves fall off to protect the roots in the soil. And a lot of people want to rake them up and dump them, but you really don't want to do that, and you really want to keep them. This last, I think, February, when we had the Snowmageddon, a lot of people, what they did is actually pile a lot of mulch into their fruit trees to try to protect them. So that's one of the things that you want to think about when you put mulch on top of here.
Thank you, Donna.
This is Sicilian oregano, and it's ready for a haircut. These are the blooms, and at that point it's rather bitter. So if you like a bitter taste, you're an arugula nut, or like a little bit of bitter with your pesto, take those flowers. They'll spice it up. But what I want to do, each time you come in the garden, there ought to be a pair of pruning shears and a pair of scissors nearby. I carry mine in my pocket. I wouldn't advise it, but put them where you need to. Since these are young and tender, I'm going to use my pruning shears to make a cut. And what I'll do is I'll look for a shape. And so I know that this one's out of bounds, this one's out of bounds, and then you make a commitment. And once you make a commitment, that's your line. So we'll get some that are quite large, or long, I should say.
Right, Renee just said, then you have a bouquet,
Yeah, watch this.
and it's a very useful bouquet. Don't throw it away.
Okay. Then you can take these out, tie them with whatever you find,
Rubber bands.
tiny rubber band. I find those little teeny ones work really well with just one shot, and you can kind of get several, wind them together, and ring the door. So you've got something to hang on the door, and
You can use them fresh, or you
or
can
dried.
dry them and save them.
You can actually freeze them too.
You can.
Yeah.
And put them in ice cube trays. And then
Excellent.
And then you have very important kitchen products, because if you can use fresh herbs or dried herbs instead of salt, then you're doing a lot for your health as well as making your food taste good.
Especially that Greek oregano actually is medicinal. People use it for antivirus, antiviral. So if you have an infection, this is really good for that. And there's a number of antiviral, antibacterial herbs. One of the things that we got in this garden is actually turmeric over there. people heard of staph infection that's that people take an antibiotic, it doesn't work because we
Right.
develop immunity to it. And for example, my uncle, he took antibiotic for over a month. He had a staph infection, it wasn't working. We got some planted over there. When my sister gave him some turmeric, within a week he came back and showed her that it was good. So you want to look at natural herbs as medicine for us. It doesn't have side effects. So I do know oregano is one of those antiviral, antibacterial herb. The other one common is turmeric.
Turmeric.
People make golden milk, which consists of turmeric powder, coconut milk, and some honey. And that is good for arthritis, as well as a lot of infection. I have pictures of my dog after surgery. She developed a little cyst on the tummy. And we put some topically, mix it with oil. And it's important you mix it with oil because somehow it helps the turmeric, the property comes out, and for your body to absorb them. And we put some topically, we also gave her some internally, and that cyst was gone within a week. And the other thing too is that be careful, you don't want to take too much turmeric. Turmeric is a blood thinner, so if you're having any kind of bleeding, that's a contraindication for taking turmeric.
Right.
So.
And a lot of these herbs, we have them growing here at the community gardens. We also have several in pots for the plant swap that we're doing today. So if you want to head over and look at what we have, select some of them, we've got them ready. So let's go look at the plants that we have.
This plant is called a bitter melon. It's a vine. It is super popular in the eastern country and is actually gaining popularity here in the States because the medicinal property contained with this fruit of this plant. And it's a melon. And what it's good for is for diabetes. So if you Google it, you'll learn about a lot about this plant. It's also anti-cancer. So people are starting using this plant in particular for health reasons. And how people eat this is they take the fruit and make a smoothie with a green apple, a nub of ginger. I think some people put banana and different fruits in it, and it'll cover up the taste of this because it's slightly bitter. Okay, let me talk about what we got here. This is a gourd in the squash family, and I guess Judy is trying to get that off.
Yeah.
I grew this last year, only a couple of plants, and it grew probably about 100 gourd on this thing. What I like about this one is that it is edible. You eat it like a squash when they're tender. But once you let it get old, you can make them into this. And how you make them into this is in the fall, they'll dry up, and you soak it in a bleach water solution, 1 part bleach, 10 part water. And so it prevents it from molding. And once it dries, you hollow out, use a hole saw, and there's seeds inside. The seeds you can save for for next year's planting, as well as your squirrels love to eat this. So instead of buying corn and sunflower seeds, they'll eat this stuff. So, and this is, I think, glossy paint, spray paint. And that's this right here. Oops. And you know sometimes a melon or squash when they look like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he wants it.
Take the one that's not labeled.
That's okay, you can have it. Now,
What's
I want to show you this plant here. This is an unfamiliar plant to most folks here, but it's super, super popular in the Asia countries. It's called Shizo, Shizo, or Perilla, Perila. And this looks like a purple basil.
Mm-hmm.
And how you eat this is you can take the leaf, just pick the leaf, and sometimes they'll get as big as this. And people wrap rice with some sesame seeds and some the dried seasoned seaweed powder that you sprinkle. And you also can pick these leaves off, just the leaves, leave the stems, and marinate it with some vinegar and a little bit of salt and sugar, and it becomes very, very flavorful. Oftentimes, the Japanese accompany this with sushi. So,
I got some from you last year.
yeah.
It's coming up everywhere I look.
And I was going to say, once you have this plant, the good part is that this is one of
always
those
have it.
things that it's real easy. It'll just seize. And another thing I do, actually, I forgot to mention, is that you can actually take the leaves and dehydrate it. And once you dehydrate it, put it in a coffee grinder and make it into powder, you actually have this tea that tastes kind of like Earl Grey.
I'm gonna get some of this from somebody else.
This plant right here, it's called Hibiscus roselle. This is that tea I think you get from Chili's. It's a purple, dark ruby purple tea that's tart, and it's really, really good. Very full of nutrients. The plant itself, it's completely edible. You can eat the leaves. They're kind of tart, like lemon. It tastes like sorrel. So, you could eat the leaves, and the flowers, they'll produce something called a calyx.
Yeah.
That's right. A calyx, and has a seed in the middle of it. And what you do is you take the flower on the outer out, and people dehydrate this and make them into teas. Really, real good.
Good jelly too.
Yes, jelly. And you can also marinate it with some sugar and just eat it fresh like candy.
If you want to borrow some of these tools from the Smithfield Community Gardens, Jim is always here Tuesdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 9 a.m. and he can help with the borrowing. And we may expand those hours with the community center here, but for now, Tuesdays at 4, Saturdays at 9.